do have a screen share. I guess I think I can work that here. I can just share the screen. I do have a bit of a presentation
Okay, awesome.
that I'll work with too. Let me see if it works.
All right, perfect. And did you want to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself?
Is that working there? Yeah, right?
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming and attending. Not sure if I can see questions here as we go or not. If not, I'll definitely get through them at the end. Or if someone wants to let me
I'll
know if
keep
there's
an eye on
questions.
those for you.
Yeah, just let me know
Yeah.
if they're there and you want to ask during this, then feel free to stop me and we can jump into something. With not a ton of people, we can go down a lot of different paths on this, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So, ultimate strategy for realtors to build wealth in real estate. I want to start with just a quick background on myself, if you don't know me. Began real estate in 2011 with a private sale company, so propertyguys.com, if you know that one. I had a friend who owned some of the franchises in, actually it was Durham region, Whitby, Oshawa, Ajax, Pickering, all around there. And so I was there for about a year or so, and then through that, just started kind of not seeing the value in what I was selling there. And so also through that, though, ended up meeting some really cool investment people who introduced me to a real estate investment club and started to attend some of those events, and really got into the investing side of it and interested in that. And my wife Kate and I were doing. My wife was she was the first team leader here in our office in Hamilton, actually. So she's in this with me pretty full on, and we got into the investment side. We were actually wholesaling real estate for a solid year to 2 years maybe, and then wholesaling is like where you actually find a motivated seller or someone who needs to sell their place, and you basically sign a deal with them and assign the contract to an investor, so for a fee. So it's a way of kind of creatively making money through investment real estate. And through that, we ended up building up pretty good lists and people that we knew that wanted to invest in real estate. And so we ended up getting our licenses in 2014. I joined a team. I was a buyer's agent for 2 years, and then we launched our own team here in Hamilton 2016. So right around 4 years ago, actually. Now we have a bunch of different companies. We do a lot of investment in real estate, so it's kind of helped us add on some complementary services to our realtor team. So we have 4 different businesses primarily, one of them being the realtor team, and you can see there we were over 200 units last year. And then we have executive properties, a property management company. We do full service property management. That's where my wife actually spends her time now. She runs that full on day to day, and we have a bunch of units that we manage there on top of our own. We have a construction management company as well, who I have a partner with who runs that day to day, and they service all of our projects that we do, which I'll get into a bit of the strategy of what we use for investing in real estate and how we utilize that construction team. And then our capital investment company, which is basically a real estate investment company where we partner with people, and they bring funds to the table and we manage the project and do all the deals and provide a good return for them. So that's pretty much it in a quick, brief slide there. And the last point there, just the fact that I think all this stuff that we do and everything, I can contribute it pretty much all to our ability and then really focus on building great teams and having great people in our world to help us do this. Because I focus on the realtor team right now. That's where I spend my days mostly. But certainly all these other businesses wouldn't be happening without some great people involved. And that takes a lot of time and focus on it to do that. So we can touch on that a little bit here throughout as well. This is our team mission, just to give you an idea. I talk a lot about mission and vision because I think it's really important. You can't grow good teams and have good people to help you along in this path if you don't have clear mission and something for people to buy in and rally around. So our mission is to help others build generational wealth and to build a community of leaders that embraces high standards, provides incredible opportunities for our people to grow, achieve their dreams, and live epic lives. And why we're here today, so I'm going to show you the importance of building wealth, talk a little bit about the importance of it, and then how to do that primarily in real estate, how it's impacted our world, how you can do it too, and I'll touch on a way that we can help potentially collaborate and do some business together potentially if that's a fit for you as well. Generational wealth, one thing before we get into the whole assets and investment side of it, generational wealth is a lot more than that to us. And I think this is really important because on the team side of it and building great teams, it's really imperative to have this, not have the focus primarily on money all the time, because money is only a result of value creation. So you need to have some sort of value that helps that financial money end up coming to you. But it doesn't work the other way around. It's kind of like a be do have. You don't just have the money show up because you focused on it. Usually there's a lot of underlying things that you've done to have that financial value come to you. So leadership and knowledge, mission, vision, and values, all of our companies there, we really focus on that and make sure our team members know and they're bought into the same things we are. Assets, we're definitely going to talk about that, which I'm sure a lot of you are interested in. And then traditions and memories and building life by design. And these are just quick points. Leadership, some of the things we focus on with each category. Lots of this opportunity in Keller Williams circles for sure. ALCs, presentations like this, making tough decisions, providing, receiving mentorship, always looking for mentors and being open to more knowledge, lifelong learning, genuine interest in others for sure. And touched on this. I don't know if anyone else has done this before. I found this really valuable in the last couple of years. I've always, probably for 4 or 5 years, been looking and doing business mission, vision, and values and getting clear on that for myself. I had never really done a personal one, and I almost think it's imperative that you do a personal one before you even do a business one, because I've adjusted our business missions and visions a little bit since doing a more focus on our personal one, which is the same thing, just finding out a real big why and a mission for yourself in life. And a vision really just a kind of like a mission, but it extends beyond just your life, and it can really be endless. And the values, what values you really stand behind and want to be a part of your life, beliefs, and then perspective. If you Google that or you look up anything along that, we could touch on that if you want, but there's some great stuff online around all those things. And if you ever take something like Quantum Leap, you'd spend some time around that. Or Quantum Leap with Mo Anderson. I think she did that a year ago here in the Greater Toronto area. She's really good at that, understanding the mission and vision for the personal life and not just business. And the other point there, just making sure your people are aware of it. So to have people buy into your mission and help you succeed along in any journey, especially in business world, you need people to know what you're standing behind and what you're all about and what you're doing, because they're essentially buying into your mission. And that was, to get really good people involved in your world, you really need to have them understand and buying into your mission and vision, which is especially early on. And I spent a lot of time on this as early on building our team was, to get people, you usually can't afford the people you really, really want. They're people make a lot of money. People that are great at different roles that you might want to fill are making probably a lot of money in a role they're already in. And so sometimes you want to get that emerging talent that's coming up, but if they're really true talent and they're going to be someone that sticks around with you for a long time as you grow, they're going to need to know where your mission is and see an organizational chart of where their development path might lead them. And and it's very difficult to do that without having it clearly written out somewhere that you can show them. Assets, we're definitely going to talk about this, and real estate side of it. These are the ones we focus on: businesses, real estate, life insurance. We have a little bit of life insurance in there as well. There's some stocks that we dabble in option trading, which is a whole nother thing. And cash, I don't really spend any time on any other forms of assets or wealth building. We'll focus on the real estate one for this sake, but those are some other ones that we feel are important to diversify, I guess, so to speak, in. Traditions and memories, life by design, not by default. You might have heard that in bold. And family, friends, and wellness. If your health is not there, then you're not going to last too long in this world. So it's always important to keep care of that as well, especially during times like this. Like, that can be more important right now, with wellness being your mindset and your physical health. The mindset is so imperative right now. And in our conversations with team members, especially, and people that work with us and help us do what we do, you have to be the leader for them, because there's a lot of craziness going on right now, and there's a lot of challenges with people in their lives. So Never before has that been more important, at least in my life, is the wellness side of it and your mental health. One question I have for the group is can you write the check? And you might have seen this in bold too, but if someone you love desperately needed 100K by the end of this week and it was life or death, can you write the check right now? Or what if they needed $1 million? A lot of people have the mindset of, in terms of wealth building, they think of themselves being, I'm good. You hear that a lot. You hear that I'm good and I'm fine. I've made enough. Generally, people that are wanting to retire, maybe they've made enough for themselves, which is great. You can't help others until you can help yourself. But at the same time, have you made enough for other people in your life? If you're ever looking for a reason to make more money or some motivation there, it's others, because others are always going to need help at some point. And if you can write a check like that, it feels pretty darn good. So I think it's really important that we start thinking less about ourselves, I guess, in that sense, and more just including others in our big whys and our missions in life, because there's a lot of people that can use a hand as well with us. And the more we build in wealth terms, the more we're able to help people out. Stratum capability, I put this in here because it just ties in with team building, and I know a lot of people haven't seen this before when I bring it up, and I got a lot out of this when someone explained this to me. Would have been close to a year ago now, but this is basically the level of the mindset around money that people have. And why this is important is because it's very difficult if you're a level 7 thinker in terms of money, and you're trying to lead or work with people on a team or in an office or wherever that may be, and they're any more than 2 levels removed from you. It's very difficult to have a conversation about anything, really, especially anything about money, because the mindsets are so far off in terms of their thinking. So how this works is level 1, which is a large percent of the population, are really in level 1 or 2. And level 1 or 2 is level 1 being that they think about money in terms of weekly periods. So every week, every day, they're thinking about how much money they need this week for food or whatever that may be in their life. And in the business world, they also think like that too. So they're, if they're running a business or running a team or anything, they're thinking about how to pay the bills that week. And every decision they make is based on something that week. And you can see the average annual income that someone with that mindset is earning is quite low there, 10 to 30,000. Level 2, and as you go up here, basically your mindset is thinking bigger and longer term. So a lot of people with investments and things like that too, if they're thinking, how can I make quick money this month? Overall, that does not lead to a very large income there as well. As you keep going up here, and you can see 3 to 6 months. So if you're investing or thinking about any expenses or anything in business, and you're looking at it as something that's going to give you return in 3 to 6 months, 50 to 100K, 6 to 24 months out, 100 to 250K. As you get towards the end here, people that are thinking 2 to 4 years out, 10 plus years out, you think about some, Elon Musk is always a really easy example here. He's not trying to land on the moon or trying to do all these crazy inventions because he's expecting a return on that this week. He's looking at 10, hundreds, thousands of years into the future and thinking how he can change the world. Well, when he does things like that, money starts to flow to him in a big way, because he's thinking he's long-term. He's looking at long-term investments. And that's the way to look at real estate, in my opinion, for the most part too, is the investments you're making today. They're not always going to pay off this week or this month or this year, but how do they pay off for you 2 to 4 years? Maybe it is 10 plus years down the road, but longer term is where really the big wealth is made. And that's true whether we're talking about real estate investing. That's true whether you're looking at building teams in the real estate world or other businesses. Just because I'm here on this call today doesn't mean someone's going to do anything to pay me in any way, anytime this week or this month or this year. But maybe down the road, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 4 years. I don't know. Maybe there's something that comes from this that actually comes back to me and provides money in some way. I don't know. But the point is to have the longer term outlook is where a lot more wealth is made than having that short term outlook on things. And you can change your mindset on this. It's not something that you're born with or anything like that. It might be a bit of a product of your environment. So if you're around people that are thinking about money weekly all the time, and you're hearing that in conversations, you know, you might just want to audit your peer group a little bit around that, and see who you're hanging around with, because environment is important. And the people that are thinking longer term in this generally have the higher income. You know, if you want to increase your income, you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with in almost every way in life, income included. So just something to keep in mind there. I think that's a cool graph to show. Salesperson versus business owner. This is something, you know, pretty commonly talked about in Keller Williams, was is how much how much are you treating it like a business. Businesses build your wealth. Because we talk about business being one of those asset classes, and so, you know, we're always thinking about this is what our systems are worth, because just me being there selling a bunch of real estate is not really something that's worth that much at the end of the day, because I always have to be there. So what systems do you have in place to help, you know, grow the wealth of your business? That's kind of thinking about it longer term as well. You know, what is systems are what's worth something in a business, and the same goes with real estate. People are worth something there too, but they're always changing and coming in and out for the most part. So your system really is, at the end of the day, what's worth money there. And so we're always looking at that and thinking about that longer term and what that looks like, and how we're growing that year over year to make our business more valuable. So this is how banks lend in different asset classes. Not sure if anyone's seen this. I know I've been involved in some presentations with some Keller Williams crowds where where I've had some people share this. This is really cool. And this is something you can share with your clients too, because this is really a different way. It helps them think a little bit differently about investment and about investing, especially in real estate. If you looked at the business side here, and this is how banks lend their money, which, you know, I don't know about you, but I trust banks pretty much. The big banks in Canada, I trust them at least with my money, because I know that they spend a lot of time analyzing the markets and where they're putting their money. So I trust that they know what they're doing in terms of where they're putting their money and their investment dollars. So businesses, if anyone's ever gone to a bank and asked for a business loan, I'm not sure if anyone's done that. It's pretty difficult, especially now. And you know, if you went to them and you had, in this example, we have 100,000. That's $100,000 there. For the most part, banks are not going to give you any money. If you went to them and said, "I have $100,000 to start, you know, ABC company. I want you to give me some money to help me start up." Very low chance that they're going to give you anything. But for this example, let's just say they're going to give you 100,000. They're going to be really generous and give you 100,000. They're going to match what you're putting into the business. Shares, so that could include mutual funds or stocks or anything kind of anything that the bank might sell you that's a different type of product, investment product. Put anything you want in that category. Same sort of thing. If you had $100,000 and you went to them and asked for a $100,000 loan to match you on that, very unlikely that they're ever going to give you that. They're probably going to give you nothing. But again, for this example, let's just hypothetically say they're going to give you $100,000. They're going to match what you have there. So in both those cases, they're matching you and they're giving you $100,000. You end up with $200,000. Now, property, real estate, which we all know, if you go to the bank with $100,000 and you have, you qualify and you can get a mortgage, they're going to give you $400,000. They're going to give you 80% of that in a loan because you have a property in mind that you're purchasing, right? So, what does that tell you about the way that banks are looking at these are the three main asset classes that people invest their money into? And what does that tell you about how they act and how they think about these asset classes and which one they trust the most? Businesses, we know they don't, and they probably shouldn't trust them because I don't know if I forget the stat, is 80% of businesses are out of business in the first 2 years. It's a pretty high number that don't survive. Shares, we've seen those in the last bunch of years. They're not very reliable as well. Real estate, was the last 100 years or so, it's gone up 5% on average. And so pretty reliable that they know what they're going to get out of that. And that's why they're willing to put their money into real estate and match, far exceed what you're putting into the property, into the asset. They're willing to give you 80% of that. And so in that case, they're up to $500,000 of an asset that you can actually purchase with only having $100,000 to your name there. So if your goal is to make $500,000 over a 5-year period, and you looked at those numbers on the business side here, you need a 50% return over those 5 years, which is 10% year over year. Potentially doable, but a lot of businesses are out of business in the first 5 years, so odds are you're not going to get that. Shares, 50% return, that's 10% year over year, doable. But if you looked at what banks offer and that, I don't know many people that are getting that. Most times you're into the low, maybe 2 to 5, 6% perhaps. So difficult to achieve for sure. We're on this side, to make that 500K, you really only need a 20% return over 5 years, which we just talked about. The average return over the last 50 or 100 years is 5%. So, and I'm sure a lot of us can name many people off the top of our head that have got a 4% return year over year, which is what that would be over 5 years to make that $500,000 in wealth. And so there's no doubt, and it makes total sense that the banks are high and very, very, very open to loaning and investing their money on property, because when you compare it to the other asset classes out there, property is by far and away the best paying asset and most reliable and most safe asset overall. And so this is a really good graph to show clients that have properties but are not investors, because a lot of people that we deal with too are not necessarily going to go out and buy 10 properties in the next few years, but this might help to buy one other additional one, or maybe two, because a lot of people around here and anywhere in the GTA, really, if they've owned real estate for the last 5 to 10 years, if they've lived in the one house that they bought 5 or 10 years ago, they probably have a decent amount of equity in there. And while it's there's some extra complexities to having that conversation today with what's going on, but really, whenever this passes, or even now, there's still room for conversations like this. But these people already own real estate. They already know and have seen what the amount of money they've made over the last 5-10 years if they've lived in their house. There's no reason that someone shouldn't be going out and maybe buying one more property, even using that equity that they have at 4 or 5% on a home equity line of credit, to go invest that into another piece of property that they know the return because they've seen it on their property. A lot of people that we deal with are taking their money from home equity lines of credit and investing that into real estate or in with us. And it's pretty easy math to make it really simple. If they're lending at 4% or they're paying 4% on their line of credit, and we're getting them 25, 30, 100% return, it's just math, right? The equation makes sense. And it makes sense to do that because they're investing into more property, which they know is proven, and the banks even know that it's proven, and that's what they're showing. Except it's funny, right? Because the banks always promote us to a lot of this column here, a lot of shares, right? And so they've really done a good job at helping themselves make money through that angle there, and that column with shares. But at the end of the day, they're putting their money into property. It's obvious, and you just follow the money where it is and how they're treating their money. And so I think a lot of more people need to, especially in the real estate world, as we're realtors here, like they need to be investing in their own product, which is real estate, and getting a lot of it for themselves. Because like we talked about on that Stratum capability graph, we're always chasing these commissions, these short-term paychecks. At the end of the day, if we think about it into the future, the long-term wealth is in owning the property itself. And the more of that you can own, the more you're going to build a lot more wealth for yourself and have a lot more options with the money. Because real estate's also really good that way, because you can actually take money out of it. You don't have to sell it in order to access those funds, where shares, in most cases, the most common way and easiest way to access any of those funds is just to sell it, in which case you lose that asset and you stop losing any long-term wealth you were getting there. With property, you can actually hold on to it. You can get out loans quite easily on it. You can do different things there. There's different exit plans and different strategies that you can incorporate there. So just so many different ways that you could go about showcasing that property is by far the best investment out there, and that especially us being in real estate and understanding this asset class, we need to do a better job of buying it ourselves for one, but also helping our clients purchase more of it, because even adding one property to someone's life could be the difference between someone being able to pay, for their child's education, retiring earlier, paying off, helping that actually pay off their house potentially so they can live mortgage free. Those are really the three biggest things that a lot of people actually care about. Yes, they want the money, but they really want the money for usually one of those three. Those are the three we come across the most. If we dig down deep with people, it's paying off their child's education, having more money, or retiring quicker, having more money for retirement, or paying off their mortgage so they can live mortgage free. So buy your own product, like I was saying there, this should be common sense. There's a very, very small percentage of us that actually do this. And so we really want to help you guys get a little more confidence, a little more education on how you can do that. And really getting firsthand experience and being able to take that leap is, for the first time, sometimes it gets addicting because it is so valuable, and you can build so much wealth there. Here's a few strategies, and we're going to talk about the last one, which is the one that we focus on. Fix and flip, everyone's probably pretty familiar with these first two: fix and flip and buy and hold. Fix and flip, small profits, it's higher risk. It's really high risk if you bought something in the last 6 months. You're probably a little bit feeling uneasy about how that looks right now. So it's a very risky strategy. It looks great on TV. It can be kind of cool. You can design things and everything, but it's very high risk, very much depending on how the market goes. And as we're seeing now, the market can take a dip whenever. We never know what's going to happen there. So very high risk, but again, and that's that short-term mindset too with that strategy where, yeah, you can make some quick money, but at the same time, you're not going to build real wealth there. Buy and hold, slow, big wealth, low risk. This is the most common strategy, really. It's a great strategy. It's very inactive. You can put your money somewhere, park it, and just let it build up. And as long as you have tenants that are paying down the mortgage, then you're really going to have a pretty easy ride there. It does usually become active at times here and there, but if you have property management and insurance in place, those are the two biggest things that cover everything. So you're not going to have too many issues come up, especially if you have a property manager. BRRRR, fast, big wealth, and low to mid risk. This is the strategy we use the most. This is our strategy that we've used to buy all these properties because we've been able to actually recycle money over and over. So BRRRR stands for buy, renovate, refinance, and rent. And so you're buying a house that needs a lot of work. The more work, the better for us at this point, because we can add more value to it. And when you add that value to it, you can now bring in the bank 6 months, 12 months later and say, hey, look, here's the same product we bought 12 months ago. And now looks like this. It looks, a heck of a lot better because we spent $50, $100, $200, $300,000 on it. And now we want to, that's the same product that you bought for maybe 500. Now you can show them that maybe it's worth 800. And our goal with that is to always get out all of the money that we've put into the project. So if we bought a house at 400,000, we spent $100,000 in renovations. We're really into it for 500,000, leveraging the bank's money for a lot of that, but we're into it for 500,000. We want that to be 80% or less of the now new refinance number. So if we go to the bank and they tell us that it's worth, what would it be, about 670,000, 680,000, they're going to give us 80% of that money back, and we're going to leave 20% in and hold the house long term. So if they give us 80% back, that pays off all of our costs from before that we put into the house, and they're going to give us a new mortgage. We have all of our money back out, and then we rent it and hold it long term. So it's a hybrid of fixing and flipping and buying and holding. You essentially are fixing and flipping the house to yourself. So rather than going and selling it, you're just refinancing it, holding it, and allowing it the long-term wealth to build up. I'm gonna go through that a little bit deeper on each component there, because I breezed through that quick, so maybe it went over a couple of heads. So buy, so more work needed, the more opportunity to add value. So we always look for places that need a lot of renovations, or there's some sort of a problem that we can solve there. Sometimes it's tenant issues. A lot of properties we have, there's tenants that are, the current owner can't remove or is having a lot of challenges with. We'll go in and figure out what that problem might be and have solutions for it so we can add value to the property. A lot of people, this isn't true right now, but 2017, for example, we bought like 10 properties in spring 2017 before the market went backwards, and it was crazy hot and everyone was freaking out. We were paying $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 over asking a lot of times. The great thing about that model is we're buying for long term. So like any market, whether it's up or down, maybe we're probably coming towards a bit of a down market, which is going to be great. Long term, it's going to help, but at the time, it really doesn't matter. If you're ready and willing to take action on something, we're buying anything that makes sense at the given time. And again, we're buying longer term outlook, right? So just because the market's up right now and we overpay a bit today, it really doesn't make a difference because we're looking 20 plus years down the road in terms of our outlook on these properties. And actually, most of those properties we bought at that time, we got all or very near all of our money back out on the refinance part anyways. And so if we left in, 10 grand or so here or there, we still have majority of our money back in our pockets. And our goal is to always recycle that money over. So we're reusing that same chunk of cash that we had at the beginning, we're reusing it over and over and over again. And so all it really does, if you actually are a little over budget on something, or you paid a little bit more than you maybe think you should have, all it really does is it slows you down a little bit on buying the next one if you're using this strategy. But it definitely doesn't kill you. Like if you did overpay drastically for a fix and flip where your only exit plan was to actually sell the property, it's a big deal if you overpaid because it's eating into your profits and you might end up losing money on that project. So many different ways why this model is the best way to do it and why we keep doing this one over and over. You do need to have some secondary financing in place, or potentially, rather than just A lenders. So like I said, the properties we buy for this, the worse the better, because you can add more value. And so a lot of those come with private financing, B lenders, things like that. It gets a little bit more complex. At the end of the day, you have to run the numbers and make sense of them. And if the numbers make sense, just because we're paying 10% on private financing, perhaps, versus whatever the banks are now at like 2%, it really doesn't matter much. If you run your numbers and you're getting it at the right price, it still makes sense. And private might be the only option because, we've bought places that are maybe they're burnt down or there's no kitchens or anything like that. And just conventional financing is not an option. For this strategy, the one thing that's big that I've seen people screw up before, and this is why we always encourage when we're doing this with our partners or clients, we're always encouraging them to use our mortgage partners because they know how to set this up in the beginning. The mortgage at the beginning makes a big difference. You don't want to have a fixed mortgage, for instance. Any fixed mortgage is going to have a pretty big penalty typically on the refinance portion. So if you go back to them in a year to the bank and you want to refinance, it's not going to be free, and it's going to cost you something to get out of that 5-year fixed mortgage, for example. And so we are almost always in a variable mortgage, and almost any time I like variable mortgages, but it's kind of case by case for everyone. For this strategy, for sure, you want something variable because they have a much lower penalties when you break them. And, it might cost us $1,000 to break a mortgage at the end of we're breaking it before the term, or it might be a 1 year or a short term mortgage anyways, but it doesn't usually cost us any more than about $1,000 to break them. Whereas a fixed could cost you tens of thousands potentially if you're breaking it in the first year. So just be careful. You just need to make sure you're working with a mortgage person who understands this. Mortgage brokers are often the best because they can offer up your properties to other lending institutions and not just one of them. A couple of things here. I'm going to go through this fairly quick, but a couple of things that we look for in properties when we're buying them. Zoning options. So what are the zoning currently? What is the zoning and what could it be? Often there's some opportunity in finding out what the zoning is and what you could maybe change it into. Sometimes changing zoning is actually pretty easy. All depends on the city and what's going on with that specific property, but there's often a lot of opportunity in that. In Hamilton, for example, there's a fee to find out what the current zoning is of a property, and actually they just raised it. It's about $250. It used to be $180, but it's $250. Most realtors don't want to pay that when they're listing properties, and they don't know, or they don't know to, and their clients often don't know either. And so we see a lot of properties that get listed here, and they say a realtor will put something like 2 units as per Geo Warehouse or as per MPAC or something like that, which is nothing actually. It means nothing for the local city and what city recognizes that property as. And so we get a lot of misinformation on listings, and if you're not able to navigate that and understand what that means and understand that realtors aren't always right in their listings, there's often opportunity there. Sometimes there's opportunity to not overpay for something, because we see realtors list something as a legal triplex, for example, is pretty common here. Legal triplex, whereas they're looking at something like Geo Warehouse, for example, where it might show that, but their local city really doesn't recognize it as that. And you see this a lot in bigger cities for sure, Hamilton and Toronto, and that where the realtor doesn't know and the current owner doesn't know either, but they see it somewhere and they just expect that's what it is. In Hamilton, like I said, we have to pay $250 for that. So sometimes people don't want to do that. We'll often go out and just pay that just to see if that listing is correct or not, if we sense it might be an opportunity. And that might give us an upper hand in negotiations, because we know something that now the other listing realtor or owner might not know of. Whole bunch of different things on that, and it's totally case by case on the city, but there's often a lot of opportunities in that. Current tenant situations, so like I mentioned before, we'll take on problem tenants, things like that that people don't want to deal with. We've been able to navigate a lot of those situations, and there's opportunity there for sure. Adding square footage or fire code requirements are important. Often you want to have fire code up to speed, and sometimes there's a lot of extra costs in that potentially. Parking options, so adding parking is always huge, especially in a bigger city. So any options to add parking. Sometimes we have alleyways that aren't getting utilized, then you can add a parking spot back there or a couple of parking spots. Hydro setup, sometimes it's all inclusive. Adding some extra hydro there is an opportunity. It's a cost, but it's sometimes a good opportunity to add value. Renovations is probably one of the biggest components of this that scares people in this strategy, and it's why we started our construction company, because we needed a lot more control over this. There's a lot of challenges with renovations, and it's where a lot of the work comes in this strategy for sure. And having the right contractors is crucial. Getting multiple quotes. I've got a few tips on this stuff here. This is relevant for really any contractor, but definitely if you're doing something that every dollar is making or breaking the investment. Multiple quotes is huge. Unless you have the same person you're using over and over again. Referrals are almost always the best way to go in terms of connecting with good contractors. Ensure they're always quoting the same project. Often, people will go out, and we have clients that still do this all the time. They'll go and get 3 different quotes, but they're all quoting something a little bit different. They're not using the same exact materials, or they're not using, you have to really know every piece of material they're going to use. Otherwise, they're quoting, their quotes can be tens of thousands of dollars different, but really it wasn't clarity in exactly what material or what exactly the project looks like. So we always get drawings done, for example, in our projects, on our investment projects at least. We'll always go and get drawings, whether we really need them or not. Sometimes there's really not an absolute need for them. If we're getting permits and stuff through the city, you usually need them. But if you're not, it's not always necessary that you get them, but we always do anyways, because we want to make sure that everyone's looking at the same project, even though we use the same construction team now. Before that, when we were having a couple different people quote on them, we weren't at the beginning, but we learned that we had to show them exactly the scope of work in a really, really clear way. So we were making sure we're getting the same quotes. Cheapest is almost always not it's almost always the worst option actually, because they're usually cheap for a reason, just like, in the real estate world. We want to always hold up our value and showcase our value to earn 5%, 6%, whatever it is we want to charge. Those conversations where usually if someone's saying they can do it for less, it's usually because they're giving up on something, right? They're not doing the nice photos, or they're not, doing the same service of some sort. Same thing goes here. And often they'll lead to a lot more expensive issues than if you just would have paid for someone who's a little more expensive in the first place. Detailed listing contracts. I actually have a few things on contracts that I'll go over too. Contractor must have job requirements, really important. References, testimonials, quotes, and realistic timelines. Realistic timelines is really difficult with contractors. They're always wanting to, not always, but often they're wanting to probably over deliver, over promise and under deliver, which is the opposite of what we want to do. But it's a thing in that world. So realistic timelines, and I always tell us if it's going to be, you think it's going to be 4 months, just tell us it'll be 6 months. Just give us something that's actually real, because it's worse. The worst thing is expecting it to be done in a certain time and having to wait. Especially in investment, it costs you money. Every month is costing you money in terms of holding costs and potential rents coming in, etc. Some obvious ones are HST, WSIB. They have to have. You can run into some issues there. Communication is a huge one for us. They're just proper communication skills. If you're calling them and they won't answer the phone ever, or they're very, very bad at communication, that can lead to a lot of issues. So, we just want to ask them what their communication style is up front, and what the expectation is around that. Some of the big things in the contracts though are late penalties. You can have late penalties in there. It's something to hold them accountable. So if they're over time or over budget, over time for the most part, is you can actually dock money off the job. Detailed scope of work, really detailed as much as you can. No upfront payment. A lot of contractors ask for like 30% upfront, 50% upfront maybe, depending on how big it is. We always push back on that. We've had the one guy we worked with for a couple of years, and he would always, even after we'd done 10 plus jobs with him, he'd always come with an upfront payment option. We just always push back on it, because there's no value in that for you as the client there. They're wanting it because they want some security that you're going to be able to pay for the job, and it's actually going to happen. But there's no need to pay up front. You're not paying, there's no work been done yet. So unless it's material and material purchases, we don't pay anything up front, just for those initial materials. Otherwise, it's okay, you've done a week or 2 weeks. We usually like to do a bi-weekly schedule. So after 2 weeks, okay, we go in, check off the list of stuff that you wanted to have done by this point. If it's done, they get their bi-weekly payment there. Payment schedule. So like I said, we like to do a bi-weekly payment schedule and just set out some milestones that they'll have done at each stage. Missed day penalties is something. So if they just like any job, if they say they're going to be there and they're not there for a few days for whatever reason, like they just don't show up on the job, we have clauses in there to outline what happens in that case. You might want to dock money off it, or you might want to give them a week or so to catch up. At the end of the day, if the job is getting done, it's okay. But if too many missed days go by, they're going to fall way behind, and they're going to end up having big late penalties, which isn't really good for anybody at the end of the day. A couple other quick things. I'll go through this quick. These are just major ways to add value to properties, especially multifamily properties, which is the majority of the ones we do. So additional rental units, adding an extra unit is always great. Adding bedrooms, laundry. If there's no laundry there and you add it, it's usually a big add. Legalizing units, which is it's a little bit complex, but it can add a lot of value there. In our market, it's at least 10% of extra value there. If it's a duplex that's not legal versus a duplex being legal, it's at least another 10% in value add. Adding bathrooms, parking, raising the rents is huge. A lot of these properties are under, really they're worth more, but they can't sell them for enough as what they're really worth, because they haven't raised the rents in 5-10 years, sort of a thing. If you don't raise your rents on a property for a long time, the value of it's going down, especially the bigger of multifamily property you're looking at, because then it's all about rents. And if you're not keeping up your rents and updating them every year, you're going to end up losing money. It's going to devalue the property. So raising rents or any opportunity to go in there and find a property that they haven't raised rents and you go in and raise them, or add, new tenants that are paying more is a big value add. Safety upgrades, replacing tenants, like I mentioned, adding square footage is always big, but not always easy. Additional income, so you can think about ways to add other income. Garages, lockers. I've seen storage lockers with added charges on them, or laundry. Sometimes you can add a charge there for laundry. Parking as well. Potentially, you can add parking and charge for it. Refinance. So refinance is fairly simple, but it's really important that you just know a few things here. When we're looking at this and analyzing this, is more something we look at the beginning. Is the property needs the cash flow after the refinance. We don't want to be putting money into the property every month. Sometimes we've taken less of we've taken a smaller appraisal number, like they've appraised it at 800, but we said, well, just do it at 750 or 770, because we want to still be positive every month. At the same time, the higher the refinance number, the more money you're putting back in your pocket right away. So there's been times where we've flipped the property to ourselves with this model and put another $100,000+ in our pockets above and beyond what the bank paid us back, and it's tax-free money, which is really cool, and really it's at least tax deferred until you end up selling the property. So it's in that case, you sometimes end up with a decision. Maybe you take a lot less cash flow, because now you're maybe you're cash flow neutral and you're not making a lot of extra cash flow every month, but you have a chunk of cash right now in your pocket that you can go reinvest. So, but we usually look for properties still cash flowing pretty well, at least a few $100s a month after all of our expenses and property management and everything are paid. Appraisers, this is why we work with the same mortgage person over and over again, because they have great relationships with the lenders, and we're able to actually, through that relationship here, we're able to actually pick the same appraiser every time, which is really key, because they're just a little bit more in our favor when it comes to the values that they're putting on these properties, because they know the type of work we've done in the past. They know that giving us, the benefit of a doubt, maybe they're giving us $10,000, $20,000 extra than they would have given someone else. That's a lot of extra cash in our pockets to go reinvest, and they're comfortable and confident that they're not going to, have any big issues with, they're not going to lose their license or anything crazy, because we're not going to default or something on a property. So getting in those relationships is huge, and treating them well and making sure that they do a good job for you. We appraise them. So we give the appraiser our own report, and so anytime an appraiser is going in, especially if you don't know the appraiser, it's really crucial to do this. If you don't have that relationship, just show them your own report on what is out there in the market and what they should be comparing their properties to. A lot of appraisers are coming in from out of town, so they're just pulling up properties on the MLS that they think are relevant, but maybe you might be able to add some value to that and make sure that they actually are using ones that are really comparable. I've seen appraisers, at a $500,000 price point be over $50,000 off, and maybe you've seen even worse than that. I've seen big variations there. So that's a big important piece here, is getting that appraisal number to come in on par with what you expected, and showing them a report is sometimes really helpful. So we put all the different stuff that we've done to the property, all the different added values we've done, and our own comparables as to what we think the comparable properties are, so they come up with their price. We provide rental income information on that, and show before, during, and after photos. Sometimes when you put a tenant in the property, an appraiser comes through at that point, it doesn't always look the best. Sometimes they just moved in and there's boxes everywhere and things like that. And the appraiser is just like anyone else, like any buyer or seller, essentially. They're going to go in. Sometimes they can't look past that stuff. So having a really clean and tidy place with the tenant in there is great, because it does show that it's real rental income, and that's what that person's paying. But at the same time, sometimes it's a bit of a mess. So we always like to take photos when it's done, before anyone's moved in. That way, if the appraisal happens and there's already a tenant in there, you can show them what it looks like without any of the tenant's crap around the place, because sometimes that doesn't always look the best. The rent, this is fairly straightforward here, but this is something you do need to keep in mind when you're going through a project like this or any rental property, just on the timing of when you're going to go to rent it. March to November is great, but if you're ending a project and it's finishing in November, we're always expecting, we end up being pretty cautious on when we're going to get our rent in, because putting a tenant in December, January, and February is tough. Especially January is really tough, just with New Year and being winter. A lot of people aren't going to move. So just being cautious on the on the amount you're going to get. You might end up getting a little bit less for rent in those months, or you might have to wait until March in order to get a good tenant that you're going to approve. It's better off to wait an extra month or two. It's pretty much always better off to wait a month or two, have a good tenant, versus taking a risk on someone who's going to potentially cost you a lot more than just those two rents. Just those two rental payments might cost you by waiting. Like I was going over, the never settle for tenant with multiple red flags. There's okay to have a little credit hiccup here or there with tenants. That's often why they're renting and not buying something. But at the same time, if they're dishonest about it, or there's multiple red flags there, it's definitely not a good thing to get into. Tenants can cost a lot. Bad tenants can cost you a lot of money. Quality photos, curb appeal, safety, those are all important pieces there. We like to look for young professionals. It's not everyone's perfect type of tenant, but it's great for us because they actually end up leaving every 2-3 years usually, because they go and buy a house, because often it's their first time out on their own, or maybe their first or second time out on their own, or first time in a new city with a good job. And if they leave every 2 or 3 years, it's actually great, because in Ontario we can't increase the rents. We can only increase them marginally every year. But if someone moves out, you can now charge whatever you want. So, if the rental rates are going up 10, 15% year over year, but we're only able to raise it 1%, then we're missing out on a big chunk of cash flow there every year, unless they move out. And once they move out, we can upgrade that rental number and get it back to what the market is. We do showings open house style. So just as you would a normal property, we have multiple people coming in at once. This is really only doable in a hot rental market, but a lot of our markets are that way. At least they were, and maybe they will be once we go back to some normalcy. But open house style has worked really well for us, because it builds up some hype around the property, and it sometimes we get people actually fighting over like bidding wars for the property from a rental standpoint. So you might actually end up getting $50 or a couple $100 more than you might otherwise by doing it that way. Neighborly.com is a really good tool that we use to screen tenants. They do a lot of the work for you. Actually, they just changed their structure. It used to be free because they have a deal with the insurance companies, but now it's back to being paid. I think it's $25 per application. We always just put that back on the tenant. If they really are serious and they want to apply for it, it's $25. That's the fee to apply for this property. And most people don't have an issue with that, unless they're usually not that great at tenants if they have a big issue with that. Welcome baskets and cleaning supplies. A really good gift on move-in date is a welcome basket of cleaning supplies, because it enforces the fact that they should keep good care of your property and clean it once in a while. And they probably appreciate it, because it's stuff that they usually don't bring with them when they're moving from another place. Often that gets just tossed away. And if they do want to keep a clean place, a few little things in there can really be helpful, and they'll appreciate that. Hold, treat it like a business, and fours. A lot of people have issues with this. This is why I love having a property management company to deal with stuff, because it takes away the personal connection that, if someone's late on rent by a day, you're very, very often going to give them a bit of grace period, especially if they paid, if they paid well every month previously. But you really shouldn't be doing that. It's a business. If you're late on a mortgage payment, the bank doesn't just wait around for you just because you had a tough month or because you have a specific personal situation going on, which are stories that you would hear a lot from tenants. Issue N4s, which are the notice that they're late on their rent. We issue those on the second of the month, every month if they're late. Doesn't mean they're getting evicted. It's just a notice to start the process, because if you don't do that and you wait a couple weeks, it just delays. And that system is not really well run. Never has been, from what I've seen. And it really can take a long time to remove tenants if you need to go the whole way with that. and you just don't want to waste any time with it because it can get really time consuming. So start with the N4s right away. Treat them well. They're like employees for you. They're feeding into your business. If you're going to treat like a business, then your tenants are your employees, and you want to treat them well, just like you would any other employee that you work with. Treat them with respect. Give them a gift at Christmas. $50 here and there goes a really long ways over how they treat the property. Property management is a great investment. I always, a lot of clients debate whether they want to manage themselves or have someone pay someone to manage it. Really good. I said great property management because there is some pretty not the best management companies out there. So if you have a really good one though, it often pays. First of all, it's going to give you a lot of time back, obviously, and you're not going to avoid any of these weird calls from time to time. But it's also going to often save you money because they're going to know and have the experience to make decisions that you might not be able to make because you don't have the same type of experience that they do dealing with tenants and properties over and over again. So I think it's a really good investment, well worth it. But sometimes we have clients who are only going to ever buy one or two, and they don't mind doing some of the management themselves. I find it's a really good investment over time, though. So all that stuff, a lot of information there to go over. Some action items that come from that. Like I said at the beginning, buying properties yourself, it's the best investment out there. Banks are lending money on it because they love it. It's a great way, and if we're already in this world, we might as well be buying our own product and building longer term wealth for ourselves. Start buying properties using other people's money. We actually, a lot of these projects we don't fund ourselves. We have partners that come in on this with us. So a lot of people's objection, after going through all this might be that you don't have any money to use to do this strategy or to invest like this. There's always people out there in your world that might have access to funds or might have the funds already, and they don't know how to do this. So they don't know what to do with their money. If they own real estate already and they have money sitting around or a home equity line of credit or access to that, it's going through that chart I had at the beginning where you can show them how banks lend money and how they really already know that the bank that they make money in real estate, but they're just being sold over and over again by the banks to not go that route, to actually buy shares and things like that where they're not getting a great return on. And so having those conversations more and more throughout your day or throughout life, you can sometimes come across people who have money that don't know what to do with it, and you can add a ton of value to their world by helping them go through a strategy perhaps like this or just investing in general in real estate. And you can be that active partner who actually helps them do the whole project and get them a great return. One other thing that I throw in here, we can actually, if you have any clients that are interested in something like this or might be interested in something like this, but you don't know or don't want to worry about doing this yourself, we pay 50% referral on people who actually want to invest with us in our model, which is them investing into our investment company and us doing all this active investment side of it. And we pay that on every property. So if they came to us and bought 5 or 10 of them for whatever reason, or we're able to convince them to keep buying, we'll keep paying that 50% referral over and over again. And ask us about any opportunities if you ever want to do this in Barrie or wherever you are from. We are definitely looking for the future to be growing not only our realtor team, but our investment company into different areas. There's only a certain amount of opportunities in Hamilton, and the projects we are into are available in a lot more cities, and we're looking to build up teams in other areas. So if you know of anyone or you're interested in having a conversation around something like that, we would love to get in on those talks with you guys as well. These are our 4 companies we have, our primary ones that I've talked about a little bit here: our investment team, Executive Properties Capital, realtor team, McKay Real Estate Network, Vision Construction, and our property management company. We have a couple of supporting teams as well that help with this stuff. Our financial team, Excellence Outsource, which is actually a virtual assistant company that we actually have a lot of realtors that work with, through, not just financially, but through different ways. We have different VAs, graphic designers, and things like that help out, that are available if you ever want to ask about that. And RTO Marketing, they do a lot of our marketing for all of our companies as well. And that's really it there. We're looking for more people, like I mentioned. If you want to reach out or ask us about anything like this, or you have any clients that we could help you maybe boost over the edge with their investments, whether it be just with you and your client forever in your local area, or you want to talk about them doing something with us and getting that referral fee, that's an option too. We're happy to help whatever that might look like in the investment world, because we've done a whole ton of these at this point, and we are looking to help more people. That's it for the presentation.
Yeah, that was amazing, Sandy. What a lot of information. That was really good.
Lots of stuff there. So yeah, any questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer. I've got a half hour if we want to spend that much.
Sure. And if there's any participants that are on the call who would like to share, feel free to take yourselves off mute. And if we could see your faces, that would be lovely too. Sometimes I feel on these calls that it's just, we're just the two of us.
Everyone's hiding, I know.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Hi, Tess. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I have to do my articling course before the end of November. So I was just wondering, in the perspective of this strategy, would you recommend doing the investment course or the property management course?
The investment course is pretty hard. I don't know. I did the investment course thinking it was going to be easy for me, and it was pretty hard. I don't know. I didn't find it was all that. It was okay. It was kind of useful, I guess. I wouldn't do the investment course personally, not because it's hard. I just didn't find the stuff. I don't know. It was okay, the stuff I learned, but property management one, you would actually probably learn more that's relevant. Relevant for you as a realtor, and if you want to work with investor clients especially, I would do the property management one.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from people? I know there's a few other bodies on.
I think the investor course too doesn't have, if you want to use Passit or any of those other online help guide type things, I don't think there is one for that. So that's another big negative for me.
Yeah, those programs definitely came in very handy for sure.
Good to know. Thank you.
So I had a question in terms of tenants and your investors right now. What are you hearing? Like, what is the general feedback? Are tenants being able to actually follow through with paying rent, or?
So we have our management company. We have over 600 tenants, and so through that, my wife runs that day to day. She runs that company, so I hear all of the updates and what's going on, which is great. It's useful to know for sure. We typically have 5% of people that don't pay on a given month. Sometimes we have 5% that don't pay by the 7th of each month. So sometimes there's some people that are a few days late here and there. But by the 7th of every month, there are no more than 5% on any given month. In April, so April 1st, as of the 7th, I'm not sure where we're up to at this point today, but as of the 7th, so a week or so ago, it was 15%. So it definitely went up a bit. There's 10% extra that didn't pay. A lot of those people were on payment plans because they were waiting to get their the CERB emergency relief benefit, or they were just waiting for EI to kick in or something like that. So I haven't heard the actual update. As far as I know, a lot of them they should be paying by now if they haven't yet, because they were waiting on those funds, which probably they're getting access to by now. So it was a little bit of a different month than usual. There was a little bit more, definitely some more questions and some more issues with, foreseeing tenants not paying. We thought it was going to be a lot worse than that. 10%, we were pretty happy with that because we were concerned. We did, on the investment side, we deferred a bunch of mortgages just based on the fact that maybe tenants aren't going to pay and maybe they're not going to pay for a while. So we might as well take advantage of that option. And even from the mortgage standpoint, if you're paying, like on an investment property, if you're deferring your mortgage, you're going to pay more interest in the long run, the way those plans are set up. But an investment property, the interest is tax deductible anyways, so it's not a big deal to pay a little extra insurance or a little extra interest there. And we're just being safe, because if this does go on a longer time and tenants start to not being able to pay, I am worried a little bit about March being worse than that, about May being worse than April was, because the longer this goes, the more people are getting laid off or not having the same type of hours as they normally would. And even with the emergency benefit there, maybe that's not enough for some people. And, or maybe they're not able to get that for whatever reason. So it's definitely potentially getting worse. So if anyone owns investment properties, I'd be just cautious. We deferred, like I said, a bunch of our mortgages, and we're going to get a bit of a cash flow increase if the ones do pay, and we're safe and not having to put our own money back in if they don't pay. Because the other thing is that if they don't pay, there's not much you can do right now. It's gonna drag on forever. Not only are they doing no evictions right now, they are still, from what I hear, they're still going through the process a little bit, but it's really, really, really slow. And it was really, really, really slow before that. And now it's even slower. And so once we come out of this thing, there's going to be a crazy backup of situations there with the landlord tenant board. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to be really, really slow. Really slow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And for anybody who might be interested, let's say they have security in their job, they have some maybe cash, and they're thinking about investing. They're hoping the prices will drop, so they're in a position to do that. What is your recommendation? I know you talked about variable rates for the mortgages. However, if they could lock into a really good interest rate right now, are you still telling them, are you still advising them to go for a variable rate?
There's no blanket answer because there's a couple of reasons. Potentially, yes, fixed would be more attractive for sure. The thing with variable, I like variable almost every time. I like it every time actually. For the main reason is that it's an easier exit, and they usually come with a little more flexibility in terms of exit strategies. Fixed, you always feel locked in because it's going to come with usually a bigger penalty to break at the end of it. And I like to have the option. I sleep better having the option that I could break this in 2 years if I really wanted to, for whatever reason. A lot of people talk about fixed. You can sleep better at night with a fixed mortgage, maybe because it's fixed, then you just know what it is, versus variable. It can go up and down. But at the same time, I like the variable option because I know I can get out of it easily, versus fixed. I'm stuck in it, and I don't. Like, we're always investing longer term. I don't anticipate having to exit properties quickly, but at the same time, things can come up, and we do a lot of partnerships too. So you never know what that looks like if a partner wants to exit and we need to either buy them out or we sell off a property. I'd rather have a cheap and easy exit versus having to pay all these fees that are unnecessary. Because a lot of times, even the cheaper fixed rate mortgage, if it's cheaper, from an interest standpoint, the penalties can, paying a few grand in penalties versus 1,000, that can just wipe out all those savings you might have had with the interest, right? So, yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
So, are there any other questions from our panelists? I haven't seen anything in the chat box.
I can add in one more thing just around that topic a little bit that maybe is valuable for the conversations for everyone to be having with clients and whatnot. We're getting a lot of investors right now, so we work with a lot of them that are, that were ready to invest before this thing happened, and now maybe they're pausing, or they're let's wait and see, or let's wait until the market goes down even more, and then we'll get in once the market hits the bottom because everyone's anticipating it to go down a bit. Almost all those people that say that, if they're using that as an objection, that they want to wait till the market goes down even more, they're going to have the same objections when the market's down as they do now. They're going to have some other reason to not invest at that point, because it's going to be a lot scarier to invest then than it is even now. If the market goes down even more, there's going to be a lot more negativity around investing, and that's why the market's down so much, is because probably it's harder to get money because banks are getting tighter in whatever way they end up making adjustments here as we go. I've already heard last week Scotiabank wasn't accepting borrowed funds as down payments. I think that's maybe only on rental properties, but that might be on everything. So no home equity line through Scotiabank. You can't use a home equity line to invest in real estate right now. That's like all of our partners were using Scotiabank primarily, actually, and home equity lines for their down payment funds. You can't do that right now. So as that keeps getting tighter potentially and other rules like that come in place, money is harder to find. It's harder to get your hands on, and it does not make buying that rental property any easier. So yes, it might be cheaper, but money might be more expensive, and it just might be harder to even get approved for things like that. So the odds of them buying when the market is down is really low. It's probably lower than it would be right now, even though the market is uneasy a little bit. So I don't know. We challenge our clients a bit on that and just say, are you sure you want to wait? Because if the right deal's there, the right deal's there. It really doesn't matter the timing of the market. And we're never, you never know when you hit the bottom until it's on the way back up, right?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And what about the appraisals? Are the appraisers going into the properties to do that currently, or are you finding?
That is a bit tough right now for sure. I don't think they are going in. I don't know exactly. I don't think they're going in from what I've seen. I think they're mainly having to do drive-bys or see photos or something like that. It seems to be a bit varying. That is one thing for that strategy we went through there, and a lot of times we're forecasting what the appraisal might end up being down the road. We're not forecasting a sales price, but we're forecasting what the appraisal would be, which is essentially the same as the sales price. So that's the only place where kind of speculation comes into play with that strategy. And we're just being a lot more cautious on our appraisals because the comparables might not be there. And if they are there still, if they're still able to use recent appraisals for comparables now, that's fine. But as this goes on longer, it's going to get tougher. And so we're being pretty cautious on what those numbers might look like. And just the fact that they might not be able to do even their normal appraisal style is definitely impacting that too. So there's some things to just know about there for sure. And
yeah,
perhaps make adjustments.
Yeah. Any other questions? It's quiet in the gallery. I guess you've basically answered everybody's questions for them. That was great. That was a really good presentation.
I can send that over if anyone wants the slides. You can send them out. If maybe I can send them to Carlos and I have Carlos' email and Jamie Lee's. I could probably send that out to them, and maybe they can send it out if anyone wants a copy.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Carlos says thumbs up, so perfect. Great.
All right, everybody's enjoyed your presentation. They're thanking you in the chat, so that's great. Awesome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Next time, we got to show your faces a little more so we know you're actually paying attention. Thanks for those.
Yeah, we're working on it. It's Zoom fatigue, and maybe a little bit of can't get to the hairdresser.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't got to the hairdresser either. Oh, there's one. There's Andrew. Nice.
Andrew. Well,
that's my excuse.
Yeah, that's Carlos' excuse. That's right.
I can't wait till another couple of weeks go by. We'll be really looking rough. So.
Oh yeah.
Everyone looks okay for now.